So in the last video we have learned about the functions of the cerebellum and the medulla oblongata. So now we are going to learn about the three different regions of the brain. So these were the important parts of the brain, but now we are going to learn about the three primary regions of the brain, and let's see about it. Forebrain, then we have the midbrain and the hindbrain. Forebrain is the frontal portion, midbrain is the middle portion, and hindbrain is the backward portion of the brain. And these parts are also now composed of some more parts, some more divisions. Let's see. Forebrain has the cerebrum and the dencephalon. Midbrain is single in itself, and the hindbrain consists of the cerebellum, pons, and the medulla oblongata. So we know about the cerebrum, we know about the cerebellum and the medulla oblongata. We are going to learn about the other two parts. So first of all, in the forebrain we have a portion called dencephalon, which again consists of two parts, thalamus and hypothalamus. Very important points. So what is the role of each? You have to learn by heart. Thalamus relays pain and pressure impulses to the cerebrum. So whenever we feel any sort of pain or we feel any sort of pressure in any of our body parts, that is actually being transmitted to the brain by the that is being understood by the thalamus part. Now what about the hypothalamus? Hypothalamus controls the body temperature and the pituitary gland. Very important. Whenever we feel hot or we feel feverish, we feel heat in our body, that is controlled by the hypothalamus. Also the pituitary gland, which you will learn in the later chapters, that is also controlled by the hypothalamus. Next, talking about the midbrain, it is a very small part. It doesn't have any divisions in itself, but its most important function is to control the reflexes, which involves the eyes and ears. That means whatever information is being transmitted by the eyes and the ears to the brain, all that activity is done in the midbrain. Talking about the hindbrain, pons. What are pons? It is located in the center of the brain below the cerebellum. Very important, this is the location of pons. It carries impulses from one hemisphere of the cerebellum to the other hemisphere and coordinates muscular movements on both sides of the body. You have studied about the corpus callosum. Corpus callosum was a fiber or a fibrous tissue which was connecting the two cerebral hemispheres. Over here, there are two parts of the cerebellum that is also being connected to one another by a structure known as pons. And also pons are essential in coordinating muscular activity on both the body sides, left hand side and right hand side both. So these functions are very important and you have to remember it. Next, talking about another important part of our nervous system, which is the spinal cord, which we know, we have studied about it, but we are going to learn about this in much more detail. The spinal cord extends from the medulla of the brain down almost the whole length of the backbone to the end of the second lumbar vertebra and lies within the neural canal of the vertebra. So basically this spinal cord is running from the medulla oblongata. It starts from the medulla oblongata and it goes all along our backbone and it ends just before our tailbone. And it is contained in a vertebra or the vertebral column. It is actually like a protection for it, because the spinal cord is a very delicate part, and if any damage or injury happens, we may become paralyzed or even it can be fatal. So as a result, it is protected in the vertebral column or the backbone. What happens in case of spinal cord? In case of brain, we studied that the outer portion is composed of the cell bodies of the neurons, and hence it is known as gray matter. And the inner part, the inner region of the brain, it is called white matter because it contains the axons. But in case of spinal cord, it is just the opposite. The outer part will be called the white matter and the inner part will be known as the gray matter. So questions can be asked, what is the difference in the structure of spinal cord and brain in accordance with the position of gray and white matter. So in case of brain, the white matter is inside and the gray matter is outside, but in case of the spinal cord, the gray matter is inside and the white matter is outside. Very important. So what are the important functions of the spinal cord? We are going to learn. Whatever reflex happens below our neck, like we are able to move our hand or we are able to move our leg, whatever happens below our neck region, that is controlled by the spinal cord itself. It conducts sensory impulses from the skin and muscles to the brain, and it also conducts motor responses from the brain to the muscles of the trunks and the limb. Like I told you in the first video, that whenever we are touching something hot, we automatically move our hands away. This is done by the sensory neurons and the motor neurons. The sensory neurons are transferring the information from the skin to the brain, and from the brain the information is again coming back to the hand muscles to move our hands away through the motor neurons. So this requirement is fulfilled by the spinal cord. Whatever is happening below our neck region, whatever movement or whatever activity we are doing, whatever response we are showing, all of it is done by the spinal cord. As a result, if spinal cord gets damaged, people become paralyzed below the neck. They are not able to move their hands or feet because the spinal cord is controlling all these activities. Just like the brain has three meninges, similarly, the spinal cord is also covered by the three membranes: dura mater, arachnoid and pia mater. Same. Everything is same except the position of the white and the grey matter. So we are done studying about the central nervous system. The central nervous system consisted of the brain and the spinal cord. But now we are going to learn about the other nerves in our body, which is present in the peripheral nervous system. So this peripheral nervous system is further divided into somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. We have studied about this in the second video. So let's see about them. You don't have to move into very much detail in this topic. Only a few important points are essential. So the somatic nervous system has two types or two sets of nerves: the cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. These names are very important. So there are 12 pairs of cranial nerves and there are 31 pairs of spinal nerves. This is only what you have to remember, nothing else. So cranial nerves and spinal nerves are different in number. You have to remember the number nicely. Next, talking about the autonomic nervous system. The autonomic nervous system is also again composed of two parts. One is the sympathetic and the other is the parasympathetic. So what happens? The sympathetic nervous system arises from the spinal cord between the neck and the waist region. So between the neck and the waist region, whatever nervous system is there, that is known as the sympathetic nervous system. Its functions are different compared to the parasympathetic. We will learn about. And the parasympathetic system is located only at two positions. One is anteriorly in the head and the neck, and the other posteriorly in the sacral region. That means above the neck in the head region and below the waist in the hip region. Over there the parasympathetic system is located. So sympathetic is located between the neck and the waist. Above the neck and below the waist it is parasympathetic. Easy to remember this way. So the sympathetic nervous system is associated with a lot of hormonal activities, even the production of adrenaline by our kidney, the hormone which is responsible for flight and fight. Whenever we see a dog, we feel the need to run, right? So the hormone released during that activity, that is also controlled by the sympathetic nervous system. So over here, as you can see, there is a table. Effects of the two parts of the autonomic nervous system, sympathetic and parasympathetic. In case of heart, like I told you, adrenaline will be secreted, so our heartbeat increases automatically when we see a dog and we start running. So the sympathetic nervous system will accelerate the heartbeat, it will increase the heartbeat, but parasympathetic will retard it, it will decrease. It is just the opposite of one another. Similarly, if you consider pupil of the eye, the sympathetic system will dilate it, it will become larger, and the parasympathetic system will constrict it, it will make it smaller. Even in the figure you can see that above the head, above the neck region, it is parasympathetic, and below the below the waist region it is parasympathetic, but in between the neck and the waist all of it is sympathetic in nature. So this is about sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, which is actually a broader part of the autonomic nervous system. So let's just learn about the gist of this nervous system, whatever we have studied until now. So the nervous system is divided into two parts: the central nervous system, CNS, and the peripheral nervous system, PNS. The central nervous system, as the name suggests, is the centrally located nervous system in our body which controls all the activities. So they are divided into two parts. One is the brain and the other is the spinal cord. In case of the brain, there are three parts of the brain: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and the medulla oblongata. The cerebrum is associated with memory, intelligence, consciousness, everything. Cerebellum is associated with balance of the body, and medulla oblongata is associated with the involuntary actions like breathing and all. Spinal cord is associated with all the activities, all the reflexes below the neck region. Next, talking about the peripheral nervous system, it includes all the other nerves in our body, not any specific organ as such. So peripheral nervous system is also divided into two categories. One is the somatic nervous system and the other is the autonomic nervous system. Somatic nervous system in turns consists of two different types of nerves: cranial nerves, which are 12 in number, and spinal nerves, which are 31 in number, 31 pairs and 12 pairs. And the autonomic nervous system in turn again is divided into sympathetic and parasympathetic. Sympathetic is associated from the neck region to the waist region, and parasympathetic is associated above the neck and below the waist. Sympathetic is associated with stimulation, increasing the heartbeat, pupil dilation, etc. But parasympathetic is associated with relaxation. So this is all about the nervous system at a glance. Next, we will learn about the types of reflexes, the types of actions, how the entire reflex action happens in our body in the next video.